Greetings, Good Sam paramedics. This is Patrick from the EMS office at Good Sam. I'm going to talk to you today about eBridge. First of all, a little background about eBridge. eBridge is a rather immature platform. Oh, the marketing people think it works really great, and they have nice glossy brochures that say that it is the cure to every problem in EMS. But what we've discovered in the year or so that we've been using it both within the region and in our system, it's still lacking in a lot of areas. It was designed with one paradigm in mind, and not everybody operates that same way. So while it operates really well in one little niche of EMS, it doesn't work so well in our little slice of heaven. So we are working with GD all the time, constantly. They have a punch list of things that we would like them to implement, change, fix, etc. So your input is welcomed. We already have a fair number of things that are on the short list to do, but improvements will be a continuous process moving forward. So the second thing is that fire departments and ambulance services don't pay anything for eBridge. eBridge is paid for by the hospitals. So what we had to do was make a business return on investment case there that says that if we're not calling in on a certain percentage of runs, then a certain number of nursing minutes, hours will be freed up, and that translates to money. And money is how you get them to spend money is by telling them you're going to get them to save money. So as far as the fire departments are concerned, there is no cost. So let's go into some questions. First of all, have you ever had a psych patient, a behavioral patient, an agitated, depressed, maybe combative, angry, suicidal, homicidal ideations or a plan, and you were going to transport them to the hospital, and when it came time to transport, you realized that you needed to call medical control, and you didn't really want to have that conversation sitting 3 feet from the patient. So you delayed transport, stepped outside the ambulance, talked on the phone, or whatever. eBridge will fix most of those. Have you ever had a conversation on a BLS patient, the most BLSiest of BLS patients there were, a stubbed toe? They called 911. They want to be transported to the hospital to get that stubbed toe x-rayed, and you get into a protracted conversation because you didn't say it was a streamlined BLS, or even if you did, the ECRN still has some things on their sheet to fill out, so you end up talking a lot more than you needed to. eBridge will fix that situation. Strokes and STEMIs. We've asked you for a couple of SMO go-arounds now to make an early call, an early notification, bedside notification, time sensitive. So from the bedside, answer a couple of questions and blast that off to the hospital, and that will then put you on the map. It'll get the hospital notified, and because we're going to take a picture of a patient's ID whenever possible, and it's really important on those time-sensitive notifications, then the hospital can get the patient pre-registered, and the time to definitive care when you arrive at the destination will be minimized. Let's see, what else is there? Stroke STEMI, BLS, adult arrest. This is a strange one. This is one that we had a lot of controversy about. But ultimately, what is it that you tell the hospital when you have ongoing resuscitation that really, really is important for the hospital to hear at that moment, that was worth taking a crew member away from patient care, away from ensuring high-quality CPR, drugs on time, defibrillations on time? Worth taking that crew member away to have a conversation with medical control, as opposed to just saying, we have an ongoing resuscitation, and there's our ETA. That's going to be one that some people will be less comfortable with, but that is one of the other options for eBridge. So, who has ever had one of those situations, or maybe all of those situations? Many of us have. So, introduction first of all. This is an app-based medical control notification system. It is not about conversation. This is about a one-way message to the hospital that gives them vital, actionable information while not giving extraneous information or taking anybody on both ends away from their patient care duties for any longer period of time than is necessary. So it might be, as I defined before, the stroke or cardiac alert, STEMI alert, might be the cardiac arrest, might be the psych or the BLS, and we'll talk about MVI, MCI, but that's a kind of a different animal here. But we're going to take you away from patient care for the shortest possible time. The secondary benefits to the hospital is once you send the notification, you are able to be tracked inbound. There is a map that I will show you. You are on the map. You become a little ambulance traveling through space and time. And when you get to the hospital, there is a secondary alert that happens. I call it the digital doorbell, but every facility sets a geo fence, an imaginary fence around their facility. And when you, as a tracked vehicle, get in that proximity, they get a secondary alert that says that Oakbrook Terrace or Lombard is here. Doesn't mean that you're walking through the door. It means you're on the campus and you will be in the ER in a couple of minutes. Just avoids having them have to stand around watching for you. So here's a couple of rules about eBridge. The first rule about eBridge is that you don't ever have to use eBridge. This is not meant to put ECRNs out of business. This is not meant to imply that the conversations that we have with medical control are not important. They are. There are a great number of, the majority of your transports, you will still be making an inbound voice communication. This is a very narrowly defined sets of things, sets of situations. However, even in those situations, you don't have to use it. If you still want to have the conversation about the BLS patient or the psych patient or the stroke or STEMI, you can have that conversation. You can have the conversation about the adult arrest if you wish to. There is no situation where someone is going to put a finger in your face and say, hey, why didn't you? They shouldn't anyway. If that happens, and we've asked everyone on all sides to not do that, but if it happens, work through your coordinator, work with the associate coordinator, figure out how you can fix that little conflict. It is going to be relied upon at both ends, and if everybody doesn't use it when it is appropriate, then we need to figure out why that is. It's, again, narrowly defined, shouldn't be overused. If there's ever any question about whether you should use it, you should pick up the phone and have the conversation instead. But in the defined, described scenarios, situations, it will be a very useful tool, and the feedback initially has been awesome on it. Adult patients only is the goal. There have been some situations where it is a really BLS, like the stub toe that I described before. Only this BLS stub toe happens to be, an 8-year-old or a kid in a car seat in a motor vehicle crash with absolutely no signs or symptoms whatsoever and not even very much of a mechanism, but mom wants this child transported. That's okay. If the child is sick, that's a phone call. If the adult patient is really sick and it's not a stroke or STEMI, that is a phone call. In general, this is going to be for the adult patients who are the BLS streamlines. And then you must only use it in the narrowly defined situations that we are going to describe. I am going to describe. You can't take a BLS streamlined patient and give them a Zofran and type that into the comments or notes. That's an ALS patient. You can't monitor a patient, but it's BLS other than that, so I'm just going to send a BLS streamline. That's not allowed. In general, anybody who has altered mental status probably isn't a BLS patient unless it's alcohol. We've had a fair number of, alcohol intoxications that have been BLS streamlined, and that's fine as long as you're sure that the altered mental status, and I'm not talking about an altered mental status with a Glasgow of 7. I'm talking about 14 instead of 15, slightly intoxicated, then that's okay for the BLS Streamline. Make sure you note, all those things in there in the chief complaints box. Okay, so now let's look at what the app looks like. This is on an iPad, so your screen is going to vary as far as how it's going to look. If you're looking at this on a phone, the icons are the same size no matter what size screen you are looking at. They are a fixed number of pixels, so on your phone screen you will have less or larger buttons compared to the phone screen size. So this is not exactly how it's going to look on your device, but it is how it looks on the device here that I can emulate. So I'm going to just walk through the forms one at a time, show you what they look like. I'm going to start with the BLS Streamline because that is the most, probably the one that's going to get used the most. So the form has a number of different kinds of fields, types of fields. Some are text boxes, some are radio buttons where you can only choose one. Some are lists of buttons where you could choose more than one. And again, not every form functions ideally right now. We are using the set of forms that we started out with. We will continue to make improvements. The other thing about the forms is that there are some fields that are red bordered. Those are required. You can't get off this screen moving forward unless you fill out those things. So we start at the top with what our unit number is. So I'm going to use Medic AAA. I'm going to say this is a 56-year-old male patient, and the chief complaint was fell. Let's say tripped and fell. Tripped on rug and fell. Contusions to knees. Okay, let's start with this as the first topic. Chief complaint. This chief complaint box is the largest text box on the form. This is where you need to describe in as few words as possible. You need to paint a very quick picture. We talk about the narrative on your run report as being kind of the grand picture, how you're going to describe everything chronologically from beginning to end. This is a pencil sketch of this situation. This is the very brief, but you must paint the picture. You must let them know what the mechanism was and what the injury was. And again, because this is a BLS situation, then it should be a fairly short story. But if I just put fall on here, then that's not going to give the hospital any sort of idea of what's coming in or comfort. You should really basically type in here, write in here, tap in here, whatever it was that you would have said when you called the hospital and said, hey, Good Sam, this is York Center, and I've got a BLS Streamline 54-year-old male who tripped and fell and has very minor soft tissue injuries. That's it. That's all you got to describe. But that's important because if you just use one or two words like you might in your actual chief complaint, and that was my objection about using the word chief complaint on this form, is that it has a context that we're already used to. So in this context, chief complaint means chief complaint and reason for call along with the injuries. So 56-year-old male, tripped on rug and fell, contusions to knees. This is the one situation where you are allowed to say vital signs are within normal limits, but there is a within normal limits button on here. So within normal limits simply means, there's nothing jumping out at me here. Respirations, pulse, blood pressure, they're all within normal limits. There is still a blood sugar, blood glucose on here, and if you do a blood glucose, it's a good idea to go ahead and punch that in. Even if all the other vitals are also normal, let the hospital know specifically what this particular finding is. Allergies. The patient either has no allergies or you have allergies and they are in a list. You don't have to write them in here. So this is just allergies kind of yes, no. and I will tell you what they are when I get there. In this case, the patient has no allergies. Medications. If their patient is only on a blood thinner, then you can use the blood thinner button. If the patient is on multiple medications, including a blood thinner, the blood thinner, particularly with BLS and trauma, would still be important. Unfortunately, this is one of those buttons where you can't tap more than one. So there is either no medications, or the patient is on a blood thinner only, or the patient is on a blood thinner and multiple medications. In either case, you would use blood thinner. Or the patient is on medications that don't include a blood thinner, then we would use list. And again, list just means, yes, I've got some, and I'll tell you when I get in. There are a number of interventions down here, all trauma related, because most of these BLS streamlines have proven to be traumas. So it might be SMO being followed. We don't use the verbiage C-spine cleared. That is a regional thing. We have objected to that C-spine clearance is a physician thing, and we can't use that same terminology as a paramedic because of our limited exam is not what a physician would do when they quote unquote clear the C-spine. So we're simply going to use spine motion restriction or not. If there was a splint or bleeding control, yes, and let's say we used ice packs to the knees for those contusions. All right, that's it about this form. If I shrink down the keyboard here, you can see that was the whole form up and down. All right, so to get to the next screen, in order to send this, I have to hit the attach button in the upper right. And every form has an attach button. So you'll always have to take a picture before you can transmit this message. So what are we going to take a picture of? This right here is the best thing to take a picture of, an ID. So an identification card that has the patient's name, the patient's date of birth on it, will allow the hospital to get the patient pre-registered. And again, that cuts time to definitive care. So that's the best thing. A medicine bottle, if it has the patient's name and the patient's date of birth on it, that would be okay too. But no other, the only other identification thing would be if you write it down. If you had a face sheet from a medical facility that had the name and the date of birth in close proximity, you could blast a picture of that too. But we are never, ever, 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 ever going to take a picture of the patient's face or the patient's any injuries. At this point, we're not doing that. We will never take a picture of the patient's face. That is just outright not allowed. Don't take a picture of your crew member's face. If you don't have an ID, you don't have a medication bottle, you're not going to write down the name and date of birth, then take a picture of your shoe, the floor, the wall, a picture, whatever. But not the patient's face, not your crew, just an ID or kind of nothing. A question was brought up, what if we have a list of medications? Can we just blast a picture of that if it have the name and date of birth on it? Yes. Has the name and date of birth, has the medications. It can be used for identification, and by the way, then you sent the list of medications also. What if you have multiple pages of medications? We'll talk about that on another case that we're going to do in the future. But when I take this ID picture, I click Use Photo, and it takes me to the list of destinations. Please be careful not to fat finger this. This should be a single destination. If you choose more than one destination, you'll get a screen that says, all right, well, who's going to track you? If you see the screen that says who's going to track you, then you know you hit more than one destination. So hit back up and get back to that previous screen, or cancel and start over if that's the only other option. In this case, I'm going to send it to Good Samaritan test device. So Good Sam test device. When you are practicing, use only Good Sam test device. Don't send test messages to a live care point like Good Sam Care Point 2 or Elmhurst Care Point 2 or Hinsdale. Tracy at Hinsdale has Tracy's computer, and you may see that if you're a department that transports to Hinsdale, but only use Tracy's computer or Good Sam test device until your go live date. Go live date will be announced to you by your department coordinator. For now, Good Sam test device, I hit send. By the way, some of the forms, when you hit the destination, you hit it off the list, it automatically sends. There is no send button at the bottom. Again, one of those things where we're going to have to consolidate what we do. So now you see on my screen here that there's an incoming alert. Now we're looking at the hospital view. There will be a different tone for each alert that comes in. You'll see that this one is color-coded green. There is yellow or red also, depending on the severity, acuity of the case. But in this case, I'm on the hospital side. I'm going to open it. Very important that the hospital acknowledges it as well as looks at the attachments. So basically, you just sent a text message that has attachments to it via the eBridge system. So it's all encrypted, and the hospital gets a couple of attachments. So let me open up the first attachment. And the first attachment in this case is the GDF. It's like a PDF, but they called it a GDF. And this is the actual form. So this is your information that you typed into the app, formatted so that the hospital can continue to have a piece of paper that they put in the chart that the physician can read, that the nurse that the patient is being handed off to can read, and it has the basic BLS streamline information that you would have not automatically given or ordinarily given. So you see I spelled tripped wrong, but there's the other information with the normal limits on the vitals, including the blood glucose. And then you notice that there is an other, and I typed ice pack in there. So under the interventions box on that BLS form, there was an other box. It is a really big box on the page, and people think they should write anything to do with the call. That little space on that form is only for other interventions. It is not for other information about this call. So the chief complaint box you see is relatively large on this form, and that's where you can write, you can write 20 or 30 or 40 words if you feel compelled to do that. Some people have been using the voice recognition within the iOS device or within their Android device to dictate a quick text note in there. Make sure you read it before you send it so that it makes sense. But anyway, this is what the hospital gets. The other attachment here would be the patient's ID. I won't open that up because it takes time to open, but it's the same thing that was on the screen of the device. So if you blasted a picture of a medicine bottle or a face sheet at a nursing home or a care facility or a list of medications, it's going to be the same thing. So I can close this and we can watch that vehicle come inbound. If it was moving, multiple vehicles moving, etc., they would all be on the screen here. And then the secondary alert, the digital doorbell, when they get within proximity. So that was BLS Streamline. Let's go with another real simple alert, which will be the adult arrest alert. Very brief alert. Very limited number of fields here on the screen. It's basically medic number, age, 87-year-old male, and really the only thing we're sending them is the airway status. Does the patient have an ET tube? Does the patient have a supraglottic airway of some other type, a King or a combi tube back in the day, or an iGel or whatever the next hot airway that comes down the pike in another year or so? Let's just say that we have the patient endotracheally intubated. There's nothing else we're sending them. The number of epinephrines, the number of amiodarons that we are 4 epis in and now we've given the bicarb. That stuff is not being sent. Might that be useful in some situations? Perhaps. Will this form evolve? It's possible, but it's not a mandatory thing right now. And what we're seeing on the other end is that the hospital knows they're getting an arrest. They're ready for the resuscitation. They're going to do that whether or not you say you're on your second epi or your fifth one. So the same preparation takes place. So when I say I'm ready to attach something here, in this case I might not have a picture of the patient's ID or whatever. So I take a picture of the table, use the photo, and then I'm going to pick my Good Sam test device. And this is one of those forms that just goes, gone. no secondary, no chance to fat finger it and hit two destinations. Um, so how do you know this was? Boy, that sounds like a high priority thing. Let me open that. So again, I have to acknowledge it. You see, you might have seen on the previous screen there that that was a red ambulance. Now you can see on this screen the ambulance is red, and the alert over here in the queue is red, and the same two attachments. In this case, a picture of my desk and the form that we sent. Not going to open that form because it shows you the same stuff that you already saw there. So the question is, how do we know that this was sent and received? Right now, there is no automatic feedback to you that says this was delivered and it was open and acknowledged, or you sent that but nobody acknowledged it. Right now, the way to do that is this little clock icon in the lower right here. I'm tapping on it, and now you see a list of all of the alerts. The top alert in here is the one, because the little flashing ambulance there, that's the one that was just sent, and that's the one that's being tracked. So you can see at a glance, oh, you know what, on this arrest, I wasn't sure that I didn't fat finger that and send it to Elmhurst instead of Good Sam. So let me look and make sure that I sent it to the right place. In fact, it says Good Sam. That was where I intended to say it. You also see the second line is the alert type and what the ETA is currently. And the third line is acknowledged. If you look down to the fourth one on this screen, you see that that one says sent. And on down the way, the first red one on down the pike there, a psych report, it says delivered, which means it was not opened and it was not acknowledged. So the sequence is it was delivered, which means you sent it, it went through the system, it hit the care point on the other end, and that care point told the server that it got it. But it hasn't been opened because it doesn't say that. It hasn't been acknowledged because it doesn't say that. You see a variety of things on the screen here. So if you look at it and it says sent, but it doesn't say opened or acknowledged, you know, you might want to have somebody check back or call the hospital, have dispatch call the hospital and ask if they got the alert that was sent. Because in some small percentage of cases, very small, there is a possibility of a technical failure. We had one situation where an alert was sent to Good Sam, and at that very moment, the computer was in the process of crashing. So the delivery was acknowledged, and on the eBridge side for the EMS, it said delivered, but it never alerted on the other end. So there was a technical problem in the system, and the alert was never received. What we've asked General Devices to do at some point in the future is give us an automatic feedback mechanism of some kind. They currently are favoring if nobody opens it or acknowledges it within a certain period of time, then you will get an alert that says failure. I would prefer an affirmative alert that you get a little ding dong when the alert was opened on the other end. I don't care about the acknowledge thing. To me, there should be one button on that screen that says print everything and acknowledge this with one tap instead of having to make 3 or 4 or 5 taps on the hospital side. So that is what it looks like on the hospital side, and that is what it looks like on your side, that the hospital did in fact receive and acknowledge that. So we did adult arrest. You see an ALS report thing on here on my screen. You won't see that on yours. We've got some testing things in the works. Let's go with the psych report. Same top of the form. It is medic unit. It is date and time stamped automatically. In this case, it's a 43-year-old female patient who was suicidal with a plan, or let's say not. Let's just say anxiety and depression. Vitals are either within normal limits, or in this case, if it's a patient who's standoffish or too anxious or combative and you can't get a set of vitals, then you can say unable. It would be great if you could do something, even just like, put the pulse ox probe on him and get a heart rate and a saturation, but maybe not a blood pressure. But you do what you can. In this case, it is a patient who doesn't want us to touch her, so we're going to go with unable. Unknown, I'm sorry, there is no unknown for the patients who are combative. There is either no known allergies or yes, the patient has allergies. So let's just say none and none on those. And the patient at this point is calm and cooperative. And the only gotta have it field besides the ones up above on this one, rather unusual at the bottom, is do I want security alerted, yes or no? We don't need security. This patient is just depressed and anxious. But if it was combative, etc., then you would want that. I click attach. Let's say I was able to get the patient's ID. So blast a picture of the ID. Use that. Send it along to Good Sam test device. And we'll see how long it takes to come in here. Okay, so you hear a different tone. In this case, it's a yellow alert. So we'll open it and acknowledge it. The nurse on the other end would be printing out these attachments. Again, one button to do all that would be my preference, but I haven't got what I want yet. And then there they are on the board. You see that because I'm sending these from the same device, it's overwriting the previous alert. But now you see we're a little yellow ambulance and a little yellow block in the queue there. So let's go with a stroke alert. So same kind of stuff. Pick the medic unit. We're going to be medic C here. It's a 66-year-old male patient, and the only questions here are last known well time, and it's in 4-hour blocks up to 12, and then 12 beyond that. Is the blood glucose greater than 60? So we're not asking for a number here. In fact, we're not asking for vitals on this form. We're simply saying, is the blood sugar the reason for this altered state? Does the patient take meds? And then what is the indication? So in this case, our blood glucose is greater than 60. The patient has a list of medications, but none of which is a blood thinner. And your only indication will be Cincinnati Stroke Scale abnormal. So if it's a normal Cincinnati Stroke Scale, you probably wouldn't be calling a stroke alert. This is going to be a classical stroke patient. This is going to be the patient who, from the door across the room, you can see that their face is drooping off their skull, and they have, speech impediment and flaccidity. It's going to be a classical stroke patient. This isn't going to be I'm not really sure, or a TIA with resolved symptoms. That's still a phone call. Make the call on those guys. This is just a real classical stroke, no question about it in my mind. I'm going to blast off a stroke alert. If the first words out of your mouth to the hospital would have been, hello, this is Oak Brook Medic with a stroke alert, then an eBridge alert is the perfect substitution for that. So let's get a picture of the driver's license here. We'll use that photo. We'll pick our destination, Good Sam test device. Blast away. While we're waiting for the alert to come in, we only got a couple more forms here. Oh, it's a red alert. Red alert. So let's open that and acknowledge it. We only got a couple of forms left here. When you're done viewing this video, if you have questions, you can send them via the email system in Moodle, or you can send them to patrick.sennett, S-E-N-N-E-T-T, at advocatehealth.com, and I will be happy to work on that with you. So, stroke alert sent. Let's do the last couple here. Let's go with the STEMI alert on this one. And on this one, I'm going to show you a little trick on taking multiple pictures. So let me grab something here. I'll be right back. Okay, so let's move ahead with the STEMI alert. So I've got medic unit. I've got date and time pre-filled. I've got a 65-year-old female patient. The only question on here that will get the hospital maybe a little heads up on getting the patient registered and maybe even getting the cardiologist involved earlier is, do you know what the cardiology group is? Right now, these are mostly West Suburban. As we move east and north in our system, we're probably going to have to expand this. But let's just say that this is a patient who has an advocate medical group cardiologist. And really, that's the only other question. If there was an other or primary physician name, then you could fill that in a text box down on the bottom here. But all you're saying is this is a STEMI. So this is not for the guy with Prinzmetal's angina that just acted up, or somebody with angina, regular angina, or somebody who's got a non-ST segment elevation chest pain situation. This is the STEMI. This is the classical one. Any of those other situations that I described, that's a phone call. So I'm going to hit attach. So I'm going to go to the ID card here. You notice that my screen just flipped to landscape mode. I'm going to blast a picture here. Now, it says use photo, so I'm going to tap use photo. And then you notice in the upper left here, there is the word attachments. So I can tap back. And this takes me back to kind of all of the things that are possible within eBridge. In this case, we're not going to be using video or audio or any of these other things, although it is possible to record a video of the patient. And some places and parts of the country, I should say, not in our region, have done things like we're going to videotape the Cincinnati stroke scale on this stroke, or blast a couple of pictures or take a quick video on an MCI situation. Okay, those are all things that might happen down the road, but we are not doing. Right now we're taking a picture of the patient's ID. But in this case, I've got another valuable thing that I can take a picture of. So if I tap on picture here, it opens up my camera again, and I want to take a picture of this 12 lead here. And maybe I even zoom in on the important parts here. So let's say that I'm transporting to a facility where we've had a little sketchy success with sending a 12 lead. Or we don't usually transmit a 12 lead, but this is a hot one and I want to send a picture of this. Whatever it might be, I can use photo. Now, I could do that multiple times. So if you had a patient's face sheet from a nursing home and it had medications also, you could theoretically make 3 or 4 or 5 attachments. I wouldn't routinely recommend doing that, but it is possible to do. So when I've taken my 2 attachments there, I go ahead and transmit that to the Good Sam test device, and we'll see that come through here in a second. Okay, so we've got a high priority alert here, and you notice that we have the GDF, and then we have 2 JPEG attachments. In this case, I'll go ahead and open one of them, and that is the 12 lead picture that I took. So, would that be useful for the ECRN to see, for the cardiologist who happens to be standing by the radio in a place that we don't routinely send 12 leads, but this was such an amazing picture that you wanted to send it? Would that be helpful? Yeah, probably. Again, I wouldn't routinely do anything more than just the ID, but someone asked in one of the trainings, is it possible to take a picture of multiple pages of a medication list? Or what happens when we can't transmit a 12 lead to the place that we are going here because they don't have the right equipment, or our phone is down or whatever. So I acknowledged it, I closed it. Now you see STEMI cardiac alert and the ambulance is red on the board. So I did adult arrest, I did BLS report, I did the psych, I did the stroke, and I did the STEMI. The last one I want to show you is the MVI MCI one. So this is probably the least likely one that you're ever going to use. The idea behind this is a vehicle that's on the scene is going to give, and a real early, long before you would have time to call the hospital and give them detailed information. Give them a real quick outline of the scene so that the hospital can get maybe 5 or 10 more minutes to set up the logistics for transport on their end. Again, if you don't ever do this, that's fine, but if you work with me on this. I'm going to this scene. It's a bus accident, a bus full of seniors being transported to casino, and there's probably about 30 injuries. One or two of them seem to be serious, like a hip fracture, and a couple that are exacerbations of existing medical problems, shortness of breath, etc., and then a bunch that are just bumps and bruises. So let's say we've got like 3 reds, and we've got 5 yellows, and we've got 15 greens. Let's just use those as numbers. So I say 3 red, I say 5 yellow, and I say 15 green. I pick my medic unit, and I scroll up, and what's the incident type? Um, Tour bus crash. All patients are seniors. Okay, that gives the hospital, okay, I'm not going to be getting a bunch of kids from a school bus. I'm going to be getting a few of our elder statesmen. In this case, your attachment is going to be nothing because you're not going to be sending IDs. You're not going to be sending, I mean, if you happen to be standing by the front of the bus when this picture was to be taken, you could take a picture of the bus just as easily as the ground. But for the most part, you're just going to scroll through this, say use photo, and you're going to send it off. Now, what the value of this really is that this puts a stick pin in the earth for this incident. This puts a stick pin on the map. By the way, we're considering whether this should be a red type alert or not. It's going to stay red for now. So this just puts a stick pin in the map of the world. It's not really very helpful for this scenario that I'm broadcasting from today because my ET is only 4 minutes. But let's say this was an accident in Westmont or in York Center, and you sent this alert. If it's a mass casualty incident, you're going to send this alert to Good Sam, your resource hospital. So Good Sam then can see where in the world this incident is. One of the enhancements we've asked General Devices for is an overlay on the map of the hospitals. So Good Sam would be able to see where you are in the world compared to Elmhurst, compared to Loyola, compared to Hinsdale, compared to Glen Oaks, compared to Good Sam. So they know which 2 or 3 or 4 hospitals to check with first on availability of transports. If you were in York Center, but you were on the very furthest southwest part of the district instead of the very furthest northeast part of your jurisdiction, that might make a change in the closest hospital. Westmont, if you were all the way on the southeast part of Westmont or all the way on the northwest part of Westmont's coverage area, that's a vastly different picture as far as who's going to get the first few patients if you're using the closest facility as the benchmark there. So again, if this never happens, it's okay. If it does happen, then it gives the hospital an idea of where in the world you are, and plus it gives them a very early thumbnail sketch. My classic story for an MVI-MCI is when we had a fume leak at the Oakbrook Hills Hotel. Now it's something else, but and initially it was like 12 victims, and we ended up with 62 transports from that incident. So my initial size up of that scene of how many patients were currently being treated was very different than what we ended up with. There were hotel staff members that were leaving the scene going home and then hearing that everybody was going to the hospital in an ambulance and coming back to the scene and presented themselves for treatment. Found out after the fact. But anyway, so this is your initial thumbnail sketch. It may be accurate, it may be inaccurate, but at least it gives the hospital some early actionable information that allows them to be able to form a plan on the hospital side of things. You're forming a plan in the field with ambulances and sectors and transportation and all that. Maybe if the hospital had 5 or 10 extra minutes, they might be a little bit better able to handle all those patients or to distribute those patients. So anyway, that's all I've got for today. I ran you through the 6 forms. For the first few weeks of your use, please make it a habit of tapping on the history button on your device and making sure that the calls are received and acknowledged. Oh, the other key point is don't swipe the app closed on your device until you have reached your destination. When you reach your destination, tracking stops. When you're in that geofence, that's when the tracking ends, so your device already goes into a lower consumption mode. But at that point, you can swipe the app closed and not hurt anything. But if you swipe the app closed while you are still being tracked, it locks you up on the screen. That causes a little bit of problems. So you probably don't want to leave it running all the time on your device as an open but minimized app, because that's using up battery. So use your discretion. If you've got a good phone that has a really good battery, do what you need to do there. So anyway, don't swipe it closed until you are at the destination, and after that you can if you wish. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. Send me questions, comments, and by the way, I'm tracking 100% of these. I'm reviewing 100% of these. So in addition to sending the message sending the alert via the app, you should document this in your narrative, that an eBridge alert was sent and acknowledged, or sent and opened, if that's all you see. And you should also put it into the destination alerts area. So where you were putting in that it was a stroke alert or a STEMI alert, verbal. Now you can use stroke alert or STEMI alert, eBridge or BLS Streamlined, or behavioral psych. So it's going to be in multiple places, and that's how I know that you've used eBridge, and I'm going to be reviewing all of those eBridge uses and sending you feedback. Eventually that'll be handed off to the associate coordinators and to the agency coordinators. But for now, I'm going to be doing them, so don't be surprised if you get a message from me that says your use of eBridge was appropriate. However, here's some other things I noticed about your documentation, because we're picking up a lot of documentation questions where improvements, opportunities to improve exist. So hope this was helpful. I hope that you will find it as useful as the departments that have come before you. We want to get every shift, when they have done the training, to practice sending alerts. Only use Good Sam Test or the associate coordinator of your choice, their computer, but do not use anything that says CarePoint as a destination until your go live date. Your go live date is generally the Monday of the week following the days that you do the training. And sometimes there's logistical problems, holidays, etc. We don't want to start on a weekend or a holiday. But whenever you have been assigned your go live date, that morning, that is the first time that shift can use it to use an actual CarePoint destination. And I hope you find as much luck with it as the other agencies that are using it. Any questions, any comments, send them to me via Moodle or via email. And thanks for watching.